Chapter 2, Awareness. The first step to enable a change is to create awareness of the need for change. Awareness is the first element of the ADKAR model and is achieved when a person is aware of and understands the nature of the change, why it's needed, and the risks of not changing. Pineapple growers in Ghana were resistant to implementing codes of practice for their crops. Codes of practice are techniques and methods for growing crops that improve the overall health and safety of the product and associated processes. An awareness campaign was initiated to inform growers that certain countries would not purchase agricultural products without code compliance. In fact, big buyers like UK supermarkets considered code compliance a prerequisite for buying. Farmers in Ghana were also made aware that other farmers were cutting costs through reduced pesticide use by adapting the codes of practice. Because the UK supermarkets were considered the big prize for these farmers, this campaign was effective. Awareness building focused on profitability and the risk that some markets would be out of reach if a change was not made. Building awareness of the need for change was the first step to enable this change. Meeting the human need to know why is a critical factor in managing change. At the first evidence of change, people begin to seek this information. When change occurs in the workplace, employees will ask their peers, supervisors, and friends, "Why is this change necessary? Why is this change happening now? What's wrong with what we're doing today? What'll happen if we don't change?" In a 2005 study, with 411 companies undergoing major change projects, the number one reason for resistance to change was lack of awareness of why the change was being made. Project managers of these major change initiatives stated that employees and managers alike wanted to know the business reasons for the change so they could better understand the change and align themselves with the direction of the organization. When asked what messages were the most important to share with employees, project managers stated, "Communicate the business need for change and explain why the change is necessary. Provide the compelling reasons for the change and emphasize the risk of not changing." Some managers argue, however, that employees don't need to know the reasons behind every change. They hold the position that employees are compensated for performing a job, and that if that job should change, employees should just do those new tasks, rather than ask why a change is needed. When an organization has a high degree of control over an individual's actions and choices, whether through circumstance or mutual agreement, this viewpoint may not be an obstacle to change. For example, medical first responders and firefighters have established protocols and a clear chain of command. When emergency circumstances dictate a change in their response, rescue personnel don't stop to ask why. Likewise, when soldiers are operating under a crisis situation, the long-honored nature of military relationships establishes rapid compliance to change. However, these extraordinary, time-critical situations are more the exception than the rule. In many high-performing workplace environments, an organization's control over an individual's day-to-day work is low. For example, manufacturing employees using Six Sigma techniques are engaged in the everyday improvement of work processes. These employees take ownership of both the work product and associated procedures. They assume accountability for the results of their work. In these circumstances, organizations have a lower degree of direct control over their employees' day-to-day activities. When changes are mandated from above, these employees are the first to ask, "Why is this change being made?" An organization's control over the day-to-day tasks of professional employees is even less. The information age has brought more educated and mobile employees into companies. When they don't understand the reasons for change, or don't agree with those reasons, they can create formidable resistance and barriers to change within an organization. Groups or individuals who attempt to implement change within the general public have the greatest challenge, as these organizations have the least amount of control over their audience. New South Wales State Emergency Services in Australia sought to change the readiness of the public to deal with storm hazards. They wanted to mitigate the effects of disaster, including the loss of life and associated storm costs. Flood and storm costs were exceeding $200 million annually. The State Emergency Service used awareness building as the first tactic in implementing change. Wide-scale public information channels were used, including brochures, radio advertisements, and newspaper interviews. Well-remembered and often tragic disasters were commemorated with special community events to bring awareness to the potential threats. The goal was to create sufficient awareness with the general public that action would be taken on the local level to prepare for disasters. By implementing this change, the loss of life and the costs associated with major floods and storms could be reduced. Organizations that seek to drive change regarding environmental issues have a similar challenge. City officials in Graz, Austria, provide an excellent example of enabling change through awareness building with an audience over which they have no direct control. The aim of their campaign was to raise awareness about emissions from automobiles in order to promote the purchase of low-emission cars and to encourage alternate transportation methods. The campaign centered on reduced parking tariffs for low-emission automobiles, including hybrid gas-electric cars. The concept was simple. These vehicles would pay less to park. A special parking sticker was issued for low-emission vehicles, making it clear to the general public which cars qualified for this discount. Not only were parking fees lowered for these cars, the vehicles were clearly identified. The net effect was an increase in public awareness about the emissions issue and which cars they could buy to help with this problem. In a similar effort, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has long struggled with the public's disposal of computer equipment. The EPA estimates that about 80 million computers are thrown out annually. The impact on landfills is significant, especially related to PC monitors that contain lead. To bring awareness to this issue and initiate a change toward recycling of computer hardware, the EPA contracted with Dell to lease 100,000 computers over the course of the agreement and have Dell become the primary provider of recycling services to the EPA. In this role, Dell, a primary manufacturer of PC equipment, will assist the EPA in addressing a major issue facing landfills. A senior manager of Dell's Asset Recovery Services Group stated, "We still have a long journey in terms of creating awareness and sufficient programs to address the recycling issue." In this example, the EPA leveraged their purchasing power to access a channel of communication to the general public through Dell. With this deal, the EPA is increasing awareness of the impact on landfills of computer hardware and gaining Dell's support in the awareness-building process. Building awareness of the need for change requires the following components to be addressed. What is the nature of the change, and how does the change align with the vision for the organization? Why is the change being made, and what are the risks of not changing? How will the change impact our organization or community? What's in it for me? WIIFM or WIFM. Given this straightforward list of topics, is awareness building just a matter of effective communications? In most cases, the answer is no. Multiple factors influence how readily people recognize the need for change, including a person's view of the current state, how a person perceives problems, the credibility of the sender, circulation of misinformation or rumors, and contestability of the reasons for change.